Are you absolutely sure you've done everything right? A lot of gardeners assume full cleanup is just about raking up the leaves, but that mistake alone could cost you your entire harvest of strawberries, raspberries, and garlic next year. Today, we're going to break down exactly what your plants need to survive, even the harshest winter, and I promise you'll learn at least 3 non-obvious secrets that will save your garden beds, even if you think it's already too late. By the way, tell me in the comments, which of these crops are you most worried about losing? Your strawberries, your raspberries, or your garlic? Before we jump into the specific steps, let's understand the enemy we're facing. Winter isn't just about cold temperatures for your plants. It's a whole complex of threats. First, there's the deep freeze, which can literally rupture the cells in the root systems. Second, we have that brutal, icy wind that can desiccate your stems and shoots faster than a summer drought. Third, there's the excess moisture during winter thaws, which often leads to rotting and fungal diseases. And finally, let's not forget the hungry rodents, for whom your neatly tucked-in beds look like an all-you-can-eat feast. Our job isn't just to throw some insulation on top, it's to create a balanced, multi-layered defense against all these factors. Understanding these threats is the key to taking the right actions, which is exactly what we're going to talk about now. Okay, let's kick things off with the queen of the garden, the strawberry. The biggest mistake people make is leaving the plants as they are, hoping the snow will provide enough cover. That is a fatal error. Those old, sickly and damaged leaves left on the plants are essentially an infection-breeding ground. Under the warm, moist blanket of snow, fungi and pests start to multiply rapidly. In the spring, instead of healthy bushes, you'll end up with weakened plants that will throw all their energy into fighting disease, rather than forming berries. That's why the first and most crucial rule is a thorough sanitary cleanup. Don't be afraid to grab those pruning shears. Your goal is to create the healthiest possible conditions for the plant before it goes dormant. Imagine you're tucking a beloved pet in for a long sleep. You want them to be comfortable and safe, right? Let's talk about the cleaning process itself. What exactly needs to go? Start by removing all the old red-spotted or dried-out foliage. These leaves offer absolutely no benefit and are just sources of potential disease and pests. Also, ruthlessly remove all runners, unless of course you plan to propagate new plants. Runners steal precious nutrients from the mother plant, nutrients it desperately needs to set the flower buds for next year's harvest. Now pay close attention, because we need to bust a popular myth. Under no circumstances should you mow or cut back all the foliage completely. Those green, healthy leaves are the plant's lungs. They continue to photosynthesize right up until the hard frosts hit, storing sugar. This sugar acts as a natural antifreeze, which helps the crown survive the winter. Make sure you leave 3 to 5 young, healthy leaves right in the center of the plant's crown. Once we've completed the cleanup and removed all the debris, it's time for preventative treatment. Even bushes that look perfectly healthy might be harboring fungal spores or pest larvae. Think of this autumn treatment as a vital immunization that will protect your strawberries throughout the winter. What should you use? A 1% solution of Bordeaux mixture is an excellent choice. It's a time-tested remedy that effectively combats most fungal diseases, including grey mold and various leaf spots. You need to spray generously, ensuring the solution reaches not only the remaining foliage but also the soil around the base of the plants. If you prefer to avoid chemicals, you can use biological fungicides, for example, those based on Bacillus subtilis. The key is to carry out the treatment on a dry, calm day, so the preparation has enough time to take effect before any rain starts. The next crucial step is fall feeding, and this is where many people make a massive mistake. They use nitrogen fertilizers. Remember this, nitrogen in the fall is your enemy. It stimulates leaf growth, or green mass, when the plant should actually be preparing for dormancy. Those new tender leaves won't have time to mature or harden off, and they will die with the first hard frost, severely weakening the entire plant. What strawberries need in the fall is phosphorus and potassium. Phosphorus is responsible for developing a strong root system, and potassium boosts winter hardiness while helping the plant accumulate vital sugars. The perfect option is monopotassium phosphate, or a specialized winterizing fertilizer that has minimal nitrogen content. You can also use wood ash, simply by sprinkling it around the base of the plants. This feeding is your investment in the future harvest, because right now, the plant is setting the flower buds that will produce berries next spring. Do you need to water your strawberries in the fall? The answer is absolutely yes. This technique is often referred to as a winterizing soak or deep saturation watering, and it is vital, especially if you've had a dry autumn. Why is it so important? Dry soil freezes much deeper and faster than moist soil. The water held within the ground actually releases latent heat, which acts as an insulator and prevents extreme cold from quickly reaching the plant's roots. Think of a dry sponge versus a wet one. The wet sponge will take much longer to freeze solid. You need to water heavily. You want to thoroughly soak the soil to a depth of at least 12 to 16 inches. This soaking should ideally happen about 2 or 3 weeks before you expect the first hard, sustained frosts. The key is timing. Do this once the foliage has stopped actively growing, but before the ground has frozen over completely. This deep irrigation creates a crucial moisture reserve that not only shields the roots from freeze-out, but also gives the plant a much-needed head start when spring finally arrives. Let's talk now about the coziest blanket for your strawberries, mulch. Many people think you can just toss some hay on top and call it a day, but the devil is truly in the details here. First, don't rush the mulching process. You need to wait for the first reliable frosts when the top layer of soil has slightly frozen through. If you cover the strawberries too early, the warmth trapped under the mulch can cause them to sweat out or rot, which is a sure way to lose the crop. Second, the choice of material matters. Dry sawdust, pine needles, peat, or well-aged compost are ideal. However, be careful when using straw. Mice absolutely love to winter inside it. The mulch layer should be about 5 to 7 centimeters thick. This is enough to protect the root system from deep freezing without creating a harmful greenhouse effect. And remember this final rule: only apply mulch when the ground is completely dry. So, when does mulch alone fall short? If you live in a region that experiences brutal, snowless winters, your strawberries will definitely need extra winter protection. When should you apply this covering? Hold your horses, don't rush the process. Your strawberry plants need time to harden off, or cold condition. A few light frosts, down to about 20 or 19 degrees Fahrenheit, which is roughly -5 to -7 Celsius, are actually beneficial and help prepare them for winter. The time to apply the main cover is when temperatures consistently drop below freezing. The most popular choice is white non-woven fabric, often sold as row cover or horticultural fleece. You'll want a heavy-duty fabric, ideally with a minimum density of 60 grams per square metre. This material should be stretched over low hoops or frames to create a crucial airspace. This air layer is essential. It prevents the fabric from resting directly on the leaves, which stops them from getting crushed or freezing to the material. A great old-fashioned, tried-and-true method is to use evergreen boughs, specifically spruce or pine branches. These are fantastic because they insulate well, still allow for air circulation, and the needles help deter rodents. One thing you must never use is plastic film or sheeting. Plastic traps moisture, leading to heavy condensation, which will cause your plants to rot and develop mold over the winter. Let's talk about winter garlic now. Every gardener's main fear is that the crop will either freeze out completely or rot and smother, and both of these outcomes are usually tied directly to mistakes made during planting and initial care. Garlic is actually quite cold hardy, but it does have its vulnerabilities. If you have a snowy winter, it will overwinter perfectly fine, even without extra covering. Snow is the best natural insulator, but if a deep freeze hits bare soil, your crop can suffer serious damage. Conversely, if you have a long, warm fall and you mulch too early, the cloves might start sprouting. They will then either be killed by the subsequent freeze or they'll simply rot under a thick, wet layer of mulch. That's why, perhaps more than with any other crop, balance is key with garlic. Let's figure out how to achieve that perfect timing and avoid both extremes. The key to successful overwintering of garlic is getting the planting stage absolutely right. Here, both timing and depth are crucial. You should aim to plant your winter garlic roughly 3 to 4 weeks before the onset of the first steady, hard frosts. This specific window allows the clove enough time to establish a robust root system, but crucially, not enough time to sprout above the soil line. If you plant too early, the clove will sprout, depleting its stored energy and weakening it before the intense cold begins. Plant too late and the roots won't establish in time. The bulb can then literally be pushed out of the ground by frost heave. Planting depth is equally critical. The common rule of thumb is to bury the clove to a depth 3 times its own height. For large cloves, this usually works out to about 8 to 10 centimetres, or 3 to 4 inches deep. Planting too shallow increases the risk of the clove freezing out completely. If you plant too deep, the garlic will struggle significantly to push through the soil in the spring, and you will end up with smaller, underdeveloped heads. So, don't rush this step. Take the time to dig those proper holes. Perfect planting is truly the foundation for a great harvest. Does winter garlic need fertilizer in the fall? You often see advice online suggesting you should apply fertilizer right at planting time. Let's debunk that myth. If you properly amended your bed with organic matter and a complete balanced fertilizer before planting, then your garlic absolutely does not need any supplemental feeding in the fall. It already has all the nutrients it requires. What's more, excess nutrients, especially nitrogen, can stimulate premature top growth, and that is exactly what we want to avoid. The garlic's root system isn't developing actively enough during the fall, so it simply won't be able to utilize all those extra nutrients. Instead, save the heavy feeding for spring, when the garlic actively begins its growth spurt. Our main goal in the fall isn't feeding, it's protection. The best way to protect your garlic from harsh winter frosts is definitely mulching. Mulch stabilizes soil temperatures, locking in moisture and preventing the ground from freezing too deeply. However, just like when covering strawberries, patience is key. Don't rush the process. Only begin mulching your beds once the top layer of soil has started to freeze or crust over. What should you use? Peat moss, aged manure or humus, compost or dry fallen leaves from healthy, disease-free trees. All work wonderfully. The mulch layer needs to be substantial. Aim for 4 to 6 inches deep, or about 10 to 15 centimetres. In the spring, as soon as the snow melts, you must carefully rake this protective layer away from the emerging sprouts. This allows the ground to warm up quicker and prevents the garlic bulbs from rotting or moulding underneath the heavy cover. Mulching is a simple, straightforward task, but it is an incredibly effective procedure that can absolutely save your entire garlic harvest, especially during a dry or snowless winter. So, what do you do when a mild autumn causes your garlic to sprout early? Many beginner gardeners panic, believing the entire harvest is lost. Stay calm. There's no need to worry. If you see green shoots up to 5 to 10 centimetres, 2 to 4 inches, high, that's actually nothing to worry about. Garlic is tough and strong enough to handle this setback. Those green sprouts will likely die back once the hard frost hits, but the bulb itself will remain healthy underground and send up new growth in the spring. Your main priority in this scenario is to heavily mulch the bed as soon as freezing temperatures set in. This extra layer will help protect the root system. You should only start worrying if you planted it back in September and the sprouts have reached 15 to 20 centimetres, 6 to 8 inches in height. But even in that worst case scenario, there's still a chance, although the final harvest will likely be smaller and less robust. Let's turn our attention now to raspberries. The first thing you need to understand is that raspberries come in different types. You have the traditional summer-bearing varieties, which fruit only on last year's growth, and then there are the ever-bearing varieties, which produce crops on both current year and second year canes. The approach to their fall pruning is fundamentally different. If you mix these two types up, you risk either losing next year's harvest entirely or turning your raspberry patch into an impenetrable jungle. That's why, before you even reach for your pruners, You need to clearly identify exactly what type of raspberry plant you have. This is the most crucial rule of all. If you don't know the specific variety, simply observe how it fruits. If the berries only appeared in midsummer, you have a traditional summer-bearing variety. If, however, your plant continued producing fruit until the first hard frost, then you definitely have an ever-bearing type. Let's start with your standard summer-bearing raspberries. The process here is actually quite straightforward. Our main goal is simply to remove everything that's unnecessary. What does that entail? First and foremost, we need to eliminate all the canes that have already finished fruiting this year. They are easy to spot. They look dark, dry, and brittle. You must cut these old canes right down to the ground, leaving absolutely no stumps. Any snags or leftover wood can act as entry points for disease and infection. Next, focus on the new growth. You need to take out any young, weak, thin, diseased, or damaged shoots. They won't produce a good harvest anyway. All they do is overcrowd the patch and steal valuable nutrients from the healthy canes. So, how many should you leave? For every square metre of your raspberry patch, you should aim to keep about 8 to 10 of the strongest, healthiest, and thickest new canes from this year's growth. These robust canes are precisely where your entire crop will come from next season. This kind of selective thinning ensures your plants get optimal air circulation and sun exposure. Everbearing or primer cane raspberries are a bit more interesting to manage. You actually have two main options when deciding how to care for them. The first, and by far the most common, is growing them on an annual cycle. In the fall, after all the berries have been harvested, you simply cut all the canes right down to the ground. Every single one. This is incredibly convenient because you don't have to worry about figuring out what to cut and what to leave. This method also completely eliminates pests and diseases that typically overwinter on the stems, essentially giving your patch a clean slate. The following year, new canes will emerge from the soil and produce an abundant harvest toward the end of summer. The second option is for those who want to maximize their yield and get two separate harvests. In this case, you prune them more like standard raspberries. You only remove the fruited tips of the canes. By doing this the following year, you'll get a first early summer crop on those overwintered stems and a second fall crop on the new growth. However, be aware that this two-harvest method tends to exhaust the plants more, making them weaker and more susceptible to disease. In regions with harsh winters, simply covering the roots isn't enough for raspberries. You also need to protect the canes themselves. The most reliable method is to bend them down to the ground. Why? This ensures they stay buried under the snow during winter. Snow cover provides the best natural insulation against freezing temperatures and harsh, icy winds. You must do this before the heavy frosts set in, while the canes are still flexible. Once temperatures drop below freezing, they become brittle and can snap easily. Start by tying the canes into manageable bundles, then gently bend them as close to the ground as possible. Secure them using metal staples, specialized hooks, or by tying them down to a taut wire. Importantly, don't lay them directly on bare soil. It's best to place insulating material underneath, like boards or evergreen boughs, to prevent contact with damp earth and protect them from rotting or smothering during winter thaws. This simple technique ensures that your flower buds survive, allowing for a healthy harvest even after the harshest winters. Just like strawberries, raspberries require specific attention in the fall. Once you've finished pruning and cleared away all the debris, a thorough, dormant spray is crucial. The raspberry patch is a prime overwintering spot for pests like the raspberry canefly and gall midge, not to mention fungal spores. That's why treating them with a 3% solution of Bordeaux mixture or ferrous sulfate is a non-negotiable step. Make sure you spray not only the canes, but the soil immediately surrounding them as well. When it comes to feeding, follow the same rules as strawberries, absolutely no nitrogen. Instead, apply superphosphate and potassium sulfate beneath the bushes, or simply spread wood ash. This combination strengthens the root system and significantly boosts the cane's winter hardiness. Proper autumn preparation guarantees that your raspberries will awaken healthy and vigorous come spring. And of course, we absolutely must not forget about mulching the raspberry root zone. Raspberries have a shallow root system, which makes them particularly susceptible to winter frost damage. Once you've finished all your pruning, treatments and feeding, and the ground starts to harden or freeze, apply a thick layer of mulch over the entire root area. 4 to 6 inches should be just right. What should you use? Good options include peat, finished compost, well-aged manure, or sawdust. Mulch doesn't just insulate the roots, it also helps retain crucial soil moisture. And come spring, as it breaks down, it provides an excellent source of added nutrients. This easy step dramatically improves the odds of successful overwintering, especially for young or newly planted canes. Don't skip this critical process. After all, healthy roots are the foundation for a healthy plant. Now let's talk about the universal enemy of all plants tucked in for the winter: rodents. Mice and voles absolutely love building cosy little nests under spunbond covers or deep in a thick layer of straw. And they have plenty of food right there. Everything from juicy strawberry roots to the tender bark of young raspberry canes. Over the course of the winter, they can easily wipe out entire plantings. So, how do we fight back? First off, if you know you have mouse issues on your property, avoid using straw or hay as mulch. Secondly, place poisoned bait, the kind you find at garden centres, underneath the coverings. Make sure you do this well in advance. Another great approach is to use natural repellents. Mice absolutely hate the smell of plants like tansy, wormwood, artemisia, or elderberry branches. Scatter dry bundles of these plants underneath your winter covers. Spruce or fir branches, commonly called boughs, are also very helpful. They're prickly, and rodents tend to steer clear of them. And the last, but perhaps the most vital secret to successful overwintering, is snow. Snow is the best, most reliable, and completely free protection available. A blanket of snow, about 50 to 60 centimetres thick, is capable of keeping the soil surface temperature near freezing, even when the air temperature plummets to -30 degrees Celsius. Your main goal is to make sure that snow stays on your garden beds as long as possible. To do this, you can place windbreaks or snow fences around the garden, or simply lay down branches or evergreen boughs. Throughout the winter, after every fresh snowfall, don't hesitate to manually shovel extra snow onto beds holding strawberries, garlic, and your bent-over raspberry canes. This is especially crucial early in the season, particularly when the hard frosts have already hit, but you haven't yet received sufficient natural snowfall. Always remember, shielded by a thick blanket of snow, your plants are safe from even the harshest winter cold. So, as you can see, successful winter preparation isn't some kind of magic trick. It's all about following a clear sequence of steps. We covered how to properly prune and cover your strawberries, why you shouldn't rush mulching your garlic, and the key differences in winterizing standard versus ever-bearing raspberries. The single most important factor uniting all these crops is perfect timing. You can't do it too early so the plants don't rot or succumb to dampness, and you can't do it too late so they don't freeze solid. Finding that sweet spot, that is the true art of gardening. And I'm sure you've mastered it now. Thank you so much for watching this video all the way through. If you found this information helpful, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on future tips. Now for the big question, what proven winterizing methods do you use for your specific plants? Share your experience and expertise in the comments below. Let's help each other grow a massive, successful harvest next year.